One of my first experiences with philanthropy came early in my career at a dinner for, believe it or not, the UJA. When they called Solomon's card that night, and some of you may remember that tradition, the partners at my firm asked me to stand up and announce the total amount of our donation from all of the partners put together, which I think was about $1 million. But whatever it was, it seemed like an astronomical sum to a kid whose father never earned more than $6,000 the best year in his life. It was a thrill for me because my parents taught me and my sister Marjorie that Judaism is about living our values, including our obligation to repair the world. Repairing the world is just what UJA does every single day by feeding the hungry, caring for the elderly, providing counseling and other vital services, and supporting people of all faiths and backgrounds, which is something I learned about at an early age. And that brings me to the serious issue that I would like to touch on tonight. When I was a young boy, I remember seeing my father write a check to the NAACP for something like $100, which was a lot of money for us back then. And he talked about it at the dinner table, and I asked my father, "Why are you writing this check?" Because he said, discrimination against anyone is a threat to all of us. And I've carried that lesson with me throughout my life. It's the same lesson that inspired the quotation inscribed on the wall of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. First they came for, and we all know the moral of that story. If we don't have the courage to stand up for the rights of others, we put our own rights at risk. I've always tried to honor that principle. Whether it was defending the rights of Muslim leaders to build a mosque near the World Trade Center, a very controversial project after 9/11, or defending the right of boycott, divestment, and sanction activists to speak on a CUNY campus. Tonight, however, I'm not here to urge you to stand up for the rights of others. I hope you will, but tonight I want to say something else, something that hasn't been getting enough attention. As a community, we need to do a better job of standing together. And over the past few years, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitic violence that is deeply unsettling. My sister Marjorie was a member of the Tree of Life Synagogue when she lived in Pittsburgh many years ago. Sadly, the mass shooting that killed 11 worshipers at that temple was far from an isolated incident of hatred. Across the country, we have seen Jews harassed, beaten, and killed for their faith. We have seen synagogues vandalized and even set on fire. And we have seen Nazis openly marching by torchlight, something many of us never thought we would see except on old black and white newsreels. But here and around the world, new technologies are making it easier to spread the ancient hatreds. As that has happened, inhibitions against anti-Semitism have weakened. We can see it in the rise of violence, and we can hear it in the vitriol that is spewed on social media, often anonymously. Because for every person who openly carries a torch, there are many more people who quietly promote hatred. And for every person who shouts, "Jews will not replace us," there are many more who speak in coded language about Jews controlling the media, finance, government, and the latest crazy conspiracy, COVID vaccines. When we face these kinds of attacks, we like to imagine that our community will naturally put aside our differences and stand together in solidarity. Yet history shows the opposite is often the case. The Talmud teaches that the Second Temple was destroyed in part because of baseless hatred, one Jew against the other. Today is the last day of Hanukkah, a holiday that marks a miracle. But it began with a civil conflict among Jews, torn apart by the pressure of living under Greek rule. Now, there have always been political differences among Jews. Just look at any Passover Seder. We argue about everything from faith to food. And if you don't think that's true, I will just quote my friend, Judge Judy. you're wrong. In the past, on core matters of religious freedom and social equality, we have always found ways to come together and unite in common cause. Like the old couple who lived through the Holocaust reading the newspapers through the lenses of, is it good or bad for the Jews? Today, too many read the news and scroll through Twitter instead asking, is it good for the Republicans or good for the Democrats? For them, partisan affiliation has become a religion, and their new tribe is their political identity. The problem is, partisanship can't be blinding, and it blinds us to shameful wrongs in our own party that we would be outraged if it occurred in the other party. Unfortunately, this is true even of anti-Semitism. The fact is, too many on the right seem only concerned about anti-Semitism when it occurs on the left, and vice versa. When anti-Semitism appears in their own ranks, they try to ignore it. Or they will say, in effect, well, the anti-Semites in your party are far worse than the ones in mine. It's a perverse form of whataboutism, and we must reject it. Make no mistake, this is a tactic designed to keep Jews in both parties quiet and force us to tolerate what they deem to be acceptable levels of anti-Semitism. Well, we need to make clear there is no acceptable level of anti-Semitism, just as there is no acceptable form of racism or ethnic hatred or religious intolerance towards any group. We need to call out all discrimination without fear or favor, whether it comes from the right or from the left, because we are not truly defending or representing our community if we are turning a blind eye to anti-Semitism any place it appears. And sadly, both parties have been increasingly coddling anti-Semites rather than condemning them. On the right, we have heard conspiracy theories about the COVID vaccine being a Jewish plot, or even Jewish space lasers starting the wildfires out west. You can't make this shit up, folks. It would be funny if it were not so dangerous, because when we hear wild conspiracy theories, whether they're about vaccines or wildfires, or the election and QAnon, or anything else, we must remember anti-Semitism is the original conspiracy theory. And a world in which Americans routinely traffic in theories about conspiracies is a world in which Jews are not safe. But it's not just right-wing conspiracies where anti-Semitism lurks. In some circles on the left and on many college campuses, there are those who are using the political situation in Israel to spread lies and prejudices. They assert that American support for Israel is about nothing more than Jewish money controlling politicians and Jewish people acting as oppressors. Now, criticism of Israel is fair game. Criticism of any country is. But in America, free speech must always be sacred. We should not allow anyone to use criticism as a cover for language that employs old tropes and stereotypes. When that happens, we should all demand that all members of our parties denounce it forcibly and unequivocally. And we should treat those who traffic in anti-Semitism the same way we treat those who traffic in any form of bigotry, as extremists who are a danger to our country, who are unfit for public office, and who should be relegated to the fringes of political piranhas. Now, I realize that standing up to your friends is not easy, and that's especially true for young people. They have their antenna up against injustice, and that's great to see. But on campuses across the country, if they want to be involved in social justice issues, they often feel forced to make a terrible choice. They can either defend their Zionism and be excluded from groups that claim to be progressive, Or they can join those groups and turn a blind eye to them when they single out and attack from the only democratic country in the Middle East and the only Jewish state in the world. That is wrong. And we can't allow a new generation of Jews to be intimidated from supporting the very existence of Israel or to feel shame about their heritage rather than pride. So to everyone here, whatever your party, I hope you'll recognize that as a people and as a country, we cannot afford to let prejudice live within partisanship. We must call it out wherever it exists and no matter who is involved. Whether we hear it from Marjorie Taylor Greene or Rashida Tlaib or anyone else. And as we do this, we should remind our allies of something Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of Great Britain once said: "The hate that starts with the Jews never ends there." And of course, as the quotation on the wall of the Holocaust Museum reminds us, the hate that starts with others can end with us. We have always believed that in America it can't happen here. But when lies are widely accepted as truth, when verbal and physical attacks on marginalized groups pass without condemnation, and when conspiracy theories run rampant, when election results are dismissed as fraudulent, and when leaders in government downplay an assault on the U.S. Capitol and the peaceful transfer of power, we must recognize that tragically it could happen here. America is increasingly becoming a tinderbox. And we know from history that small fires, if they are not extinguished, can grow more dangerous and deadly, and they can even lead to the unthinkable. Last week, the UJA helped bring New Yorkers together here in Times Square to raise awareness of anti-Semitism. The event was called Shine a Light, and people lit candles for Hanukkah. Tonight, as the holiday ends, let us resolve to find inspiration in the unity Hanukkah celebrates all year long. Unity that is echoed in the name of this great organization, the United Jewish Appeal. And together, when we leave here, let us shine a light on anti-Semitism wherever it appears, whenever it appears, and from whomever it comes. Let us shine a light on the shared values between Israel and America. Let us shine a light on the young Jewish leaders who are standing up to BDS on college campuses. Let us shine a light on all those working in Jewish education, because knowledge is essential to counteracting stereotypes and conspiracies. And as we do, may God shine a light on all of us, especially people of all faiths that UJA and other groups are doing so much work to support. Thank you all for giving us this great organization and for honoring me with an award that when I met Mr. Levy 55 years ago, I never dreamed I might receive. And I can assure you, neither did he. Good night and thank you.